Hi Mark, this is Ted. My school number is SO341013. I'm sophomore. Today I'm going to read through Paul Greenberg, The Four Fish Were Overeating, and What to Eat Instead. So, when I was a kid, this was my team. Laughter. I stung as words. I didn't like to play them. I didn't like to watch them. So this is what I did. I went fishing. And for all of my growing up, I fished on the shores of Connecticut. And these are the creatures that I saw on a regular basis. But after I grew up and went to college, and I came home in the early 90s, this is what I found. My team had shrunk. It was like literally having your roster devastated. And as I sort of looked into that from a very personal point of view as a fisherman, I started to kind of figure out, well, what was the rest of the world thinking about it? First place I started to look was fish market. And when I went to fish markets, in spite of where I was, whether I was in North Carolina or Paris or London or wherever, I kept seeing this weirdly repeating trope of four creatures again and again on the menus, on ice, shrimp, tuna, salmon, and cod. And I thought this was pretty strange, and as I looked at it, I was wondering, did anyone else notice this sort of shrinking of the market? Well, when I looked into it, I realized that people didn't look at it as their team. Ordinary people, the way they looked at seafood was like this. It's not an unusual human characteristic to reduce the natural world down to very few elements. We did it before. 10,000 years ago, when we came out of our caves, if you look at fire pits from 10,000 years ago, you'll see raccoons, you see, wolves, you'll see all kind of different creatures. But if you telescope to the age of, 2,000 years ago, you'll see these four mammals: pigs, cows, sheep, and goats. It's true of birds too. You look at the menus in New York City restaurant 150 years ago, 200 years ago, you'll see snipe, woodcock, grouse, dozens of ducks, dozens of geese. But telescope ahead to the age of modern animal husbandry, and you'll see four: turkeys, ducks, chicken, and geese. So it makes sense that we've headed in this direction. But how we headed in this direction? Well, first is a very, very new problem. This is the way we've been fishing the ocean over the last 50 years. World War II was a tremendous incentive to arm ourselves in a war against fish. All of the technology that was perfect during World War II, sonar, lightweight polymers, all these things were redirected for fish. And so you see this tremendous build-up in fishing capacity, quadrupling in the course of time from the end of World War II to the present time. And right now that means we're taking between 80 and 90 million metric tons out of the sea every year. That's the equivalent of the human weight of China taken out of the sea every year. And it's no coincidence that I use China as the example because China is now the largest fishing nation in the world. Well, that's only half the story. The other half of the story is this incredible boom in fish farming and aquaculture, which is now only in the last year or two starting to exceed the amount of wild fish that we produce. So that if you added wild fish and farm fish together. You get the equivalent of two Chinas created from the ocean each and every year. And again, it's not a coincidence that I use China as the example, because China, in addition to being the biggest catcher of fish, is also the biggest farmer of fish. So, let's look through at the four choices we are making right now. The first one, by far the most consumed seafood in America and much of the West, is shrimp. Shrimp in the wild as a wild product is a terrible product. 5, 10, 15 pounds of wild fish are regularly killed to bring 1 pound of shrimp to the market. They're also incredibly full and inefficient to bring to the market. In a recent study that was produced out of Dalhousie University, it was found that dragging for shrimp is one of the most carbon-intensive way of fishing that you can find. So you can farm them, and people do farm them, and they farm them a lot in this very area. Problem is, the place where farm shrimps is in these wild habitats, in mangrove forest. Now look at those lovely roots coming down. Those are the things that hold soil together, protect coast, create habitats for all sorts of young fish, young shrimps, all sorts of things that are important to this environment. Well, this is what happened to a lot of coastal mangrove forests. We've lost millions of acres of coastal mangroves over the last 30 or 40 years. That rate of destruction has slowed, but we're still in a major mangrove deficit. The other thing that going on here is a phenomenon that the filmmaker Mark Benjamin called grinding Nemo. This phenomenon is very relevant to anything that you ever seen on the tropic reef. Because what's going on right now, we have shrimp draggers dragging for shrimp, catching a huge amount of bycatch. That bycatch in turn gets grown up and turned into shrimp food. And sometimes many of these vessels, manned by slaves, are catching these so-called trash fish that we would love to see on the reef, grinding them up and turning them into shrimp fish. An ecosystem literally eating itself and spitting out shrimp. The next most consumed seafood in America and also throughout the West is tuna. So tuna is this endemic global fish. These huge management areas have to be observed in order for tuna to be well managed. Our own management area, called the Regional Fisheries Management Organization, is called ICCAT, the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas. The great naturalist Carl Safina once called it the international conspiracy to catch all the tunas. Of course, we've seen incredible improvement in ICCAT in the last few years. There is total room for improvement, but it remains to be said that tuna is a global fish, and to manage it, we have to manage the globe. Well, we could also try to grow tuna, but tuna is a spectacularly bad animal for aquaculture. Many people don't know this, but tuna are warm-blooded. They can heat their body 20 degrees above ambient temperature. They can swim at over 40 miles an hour. So that pretty much eliminates all the advantage of farming a fish, right? A farm fish is, or a fish is cold-blooded, it doesn't move too much, that's a great thing for growing protein. But if you've got this crazy wild creature that swims at 40 miles an hour and feeds its blood, not a great candidate for aquaculture. The next creature Most consumed seafood in America and throughout the West is salmon. Now, salmon got its pioneering too, but it didn't really necessarily happen through fishing. This is my home state of Connecticut. Connecticut used to be home to a lot of wild salmon, but if you look at this map of Connecticut, every dot on that map is a dam. There are over 3,000 dams in the state of Connecticut. I often said this is why people in Connecticut is so outside. Laughter. If somebody could just unblock Connecticut's sheet, I feel that we could have an infinitely better world. But I made this particularly common at the convention once of national parks officers and this guy from North Carolina sidled up to me. He said, "You know, you ought to be so hard on your Connecticut, 'cause we are in North Carolina. We got 35,000 dams. So it's a national epidemic, it's an international epidemic, and there are dams everywhere. And these are precisely the things that stop wild salmon from reaching their spawning grounds. So as a result, we've turned to aquaculture. And salmon is one of the most successful, at least from the numbers point of view. When they first started farming salmon, they could take as many as 6 pounds of wild fish to make a single pound of salmon. The industry has, to its credit, greatly improved. They've gotten below 2 to 1, although it's a little bit of cheat, because if you look at the way aquaculture feed is produced, they're measuring pellets, pounds of pellets per pound of salmon. Those pellets are in turn reduced fish. So the actual what's called the FIFO, the fish in and the fish out. Kind of hard to say, but in any case, credit to the industry. It has lowered the amount of fish per pound of salmon. Problem is, we've also gone crazy about the amount of salmon that we're producing. Aquaculture is the fastest growing food system on the planet. It's growing at something like 7% per year. And so, even though we're doing that for fish to bring to the market, we're still killing a lot of those little fish. And it's not just fish that we're feeding fish to, we're also feeding fish to chickens and pigs. So we got chicken and they're eating fish, but weirdly, we also have fish that are eating chickens. Because the byproducts of chickens, feather, blood, bone, get ground up and fed fish. So I often wonder, is there a fish that ate a chicken that ate a fish? And this is sort of a reworking of the chicken and egg thing. Anyway, matter. Altogether, though, it results in a terrible mess. What you're talking about is something between 20 and 30 million metric tons of wild creature that are taken from the ocean and used and ground up. That's the equivalent of the third of China, or of an entire United States of humans taken out of the sea each and every year. The last of the four is a kind of amorphous thing. It's what the industries call whitefish. There are any fish that get cycled into this whitefish things, but the way to kind of tell a story, I think, is through that classic piece of American culinary innovation, the fillet of fish sandwich. So the fillet of fish sandwich actually started as halibut. And it started because the local franchise owner found that when they served his McDonald's on Friday, nobody came, but it was the Catholic community that needed fish. So he went to Ray Kroc and he said, "I'm going to bring you the fish sandwich, going to be made out of halibut." Ray Kroc said, "I don't think it's going to work. I'm going to do the hula burger." and there's going to be a slice of pineapple on burger. But let's do this. Let's have a bet. Whosever sandwich sells more, that would be the winner sandwich. Well, it's kind of sad for the ocean that a Hula burger didn't win. So he made his terrible sandwich. Unfortunately, though, the sandwich came in at 30 cents. Ray wanted a sandwich to come in at 25 cents. So he turned to Atlantic cod. We all know what happened to Atlantic cod in New England. So now the fillet of fish sandwich is made out of Alaska pollock. It's the largest fin fish fishery in the United States. 2 to 3 billion pounds of fish taken out of the sea every single year. If we go through the pollock, the next choice is probably going to be tilapia. Tilapia is one of the lowest fish nobody ever heard of 20 years ago. It's actually a very efficient converter of plant protein into animal protein, and it's been a godsend to the third world. It's actually a tremendously sustainable solution. It goes from an egg to an adult in 9 months. The problem is that when you look about the West, it doesn't do what the West wanted to do. It really doesn't have what's called an oily fish profile. It doesn't have an EPA and DHA omega-3 acids that we all think are going to make us live forever. So what do? I mean, first of all, what about this poor fish, the clawfish, the fish that represent a huge part of that 20 to 30 million metric tons? Well, one possibility that a lot of conversationalists have raised is could we eat them? Could we eat them directly instead of feeding them to salmon? There are arguments for it. They are tremendously fuel efficient to bring to market, a fraction of the fuel cost of, say, shrimp, and at the very top of the carbon efficiency scale. They also are omega-3 rich, a great source of EPA and DHA, so that is a potential. And if we are to go down that route, what I would say is, instead of paying a few bucks a pound or a few bucks a ton, really, and making it to aquafeed, could we have the catch and double the price of the fishermen and make that our way of treating this particular fish? Other possibility though, which is much more interesting, is looking at bivalves, particularly mussels. Now, mussels are very high in EPA and DHA. They are similar to canned tuna. They are also extremely fuel efficient. To bring a pound of mussels to market, it's about 1/30 of the carbon as required to bring beef to market. They require no forage fish. They actually get their omega-3 acids by filtering the water with microalgae. In fact, that's where omega-3 acids come from. They don't come from fish. Microalgae make the omega-3 acids. They are only bioconcentrated in fish. Mussels and other bivalves do tremendous amounts of water filtration. A single mussel can filter dozens of gallons every single day, and this is incredibly important when we look at the world. Right now, nitrification, overuse of phosphates in our waterways are causing tremendous algal blooms. Over 400 new dead zones have been created in the last 20 years, tremendous source of marine life death. We also could look at not at fish at all. We could look at the vegetables. We could look at seaweeds. the caps, all these different varieties of things that can be high in omega-3s. Can be high in proteins, tremendously good thing. They filter the water just like mussels do. And weirdly enough, it turns out that you can actually feed these to cows. Now, I'm not a big fan of cattle, but if you wanted to keep growing cattle in time and place where water resources are limited, you're growing seaweed in the water. You don't have to worry it. Major consideration. And the last vision is the question mark. We have the ability to create aquaculture fish that creates a new net gain of marine protein for us. This creature would have to be vegetarian. It would have to be fast grown. It would have to be adaptable to the changing climate, and it would have to have the oily fish profile, that EPA, DHA, omega-3 fatty acid profile you are looking for. This exists kind of on paper. I've been reporting on this subject for 15 years. Every time I do a new story, somebody tells me we can do all that. We can do it. We'll figure it out. We can produce a fish that has a net gain of marine protein and has omega-3s. Great! It doesn't seem to be getting scaled up. It's time to scale this up. If we do 30 million metric tons of seafood, a third of world catch stays in the water. So I guess what I'm saying is this is what we've been going with. We tend to go with our appetites rather than our minds. But if we went with this, or some configuration of this, we might have a little more of this. Thank you.